Howdy out there. It's David Duford at DeFord Insurance Group, where I train and recruit agents nationally to sell things like final expense Medicare and annuities, both face-to-face and over the phone. Thanks for being here. I've got Mr. Eugene Marchenko on the line. Eugene, say hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Eugene is here from traintelemarketers.com. And the reason I brought him on here today is because he's been in the telemarketing game, and I'm going to let him go into more detail, but he's been doing telemarketing for many, many years. I remember going to a seminar, and I think it was 2015, Eugene. You spoke, I think, at Chris Westfall's convention that he had down in Charleston. And you were doing this at the time, and I remember you talked at length about that. And at this point, I think it's been, 7 years or something, like 6 years.
Yeah, time flies.
Time flies.
Sure. Yeah.
So Eugene's here to talk all about how even in 2021 at the filming of this, you can still successfully telemarket for insurance prospects. And what Eugene's going to do is really just describe how it works, how he makes it work, as he is a full-time producer himself using these exact same strategies. So he's going to go into detail about his business model, how he sources the leads to telemarketers themselves, and some concerns around telemarketing in general. So Eugene, jump in. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do.
Hey, so it's funny because you said Eugene from Train Telemarketers. Actually, it's Eugene from American Insurance Benefits First. So I'm a full-time insurance agent, and that's what I do. I spend 40 to 60 hours a week on the phone talking to people about their Medicare needs, both turning 65 and 65 plus. And the whole idea is to help them with their journey, either when they're on Medicare for the first time or they've been on it for a while. I use telemarketing as my primary source of generating leads. And that's where Train Telemarketers came into. And when we originally spoke, or at the event, whenever I talked, was when this whole idea was developing about how I do it and how I get to control the entire process, not from when I get the lead to when I make the sale, but from before the lead is even generated, and training these people and then through the entire process.
Yeah, and I think this is a really important thing we're going to be hitting on, is like, this is completely different than buying telemarketing leads. There are some pitfalls we'll talk about later on. At least I think they're pitfalls with straight telemarketing purchases from a vendor. Yeah. Eugene does is completely different, and I think more holistic and higher quality. So let's kind of start talking specific. So you're in the Medicare business.
Yep.
You've been in there forever, been doing that.
Yep.
How just give us kind of a rundown how your telemarketing side of the lead generation strategy works.
So it starts with pulling data, and you want to make sure you have quality data. You know, you've done your due diligence to make sure that you're following the necessary steps to not call anybody who you should not be calling. Right. And then the training part of the telemarketing is you train the person to develop a script that is actually different than what most of these vendors are using, because most of these vendors are like, well, have you made some kind of decision, or have you what have you done with your Medicare? And it's always like just trying to pull. And so when I train the people, whether for my agency, and I have 10 myself, or for any agent that needs help with it, we're always giving. It's always give, and expect nothing in return. And somehow we get blessed with the business doing it that way. And the whole idea was, and I saw a video Patrick Bet David one time did, where instead of you knocking on somebody's door and say, hey, you want to buy this, you ask the question, like, what can I help you, or what information do you need to help you with your upcoming enrollment into Medicare, for example, would be one of the questions that we ask. So it's very helpful, because they're like, I don't really know what I need help with. I'm like, okay, well, where are you in the process? And so it's always giving. It's what information do you need? Let me go ahead and give that to you, versus, hey, have you bought a Plan G yet?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it starts with the give versus the take.
And let me kind of add this to this. I think this is profound. And this is, again, it harkens back to this difference of what you're doing and how you look at this through trained telemarketers and other vendors, is that your other vendors, what are their interests in? Is it selling a policy, helping somebody, or is it to sell a lead? And it's selling a lead.
Yeah.
And there's a marked difference in what it takes to sell a lead than it is to sell a policy or generate interest in selling a policy. Yeah. So not to say you can't make sales off of a purchase lead from somebody else, but the whole way you're going about this, I don't know your business in detail, but the strategy, the kind of the underlying strategy of giving first and creating a relationship, you're not going to find that in a purchase lead. And likely the business that you're getting is probably way better than what you would find just going to any vendor they're just interested in getting some kind of yes on recording so they can validate their lead.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is, you buy 20 leads for $12 to $15 a piece. The vendors never sold insurance, or even if they do sell insurance, they may not sell the same leads that they're selling to the agents. They have their own business model, by the way, buy these leads. And so, when you buy a batch of 20, you'll have 18 of them that are 76 through 82, which of course they're paying too much, but they're not healthy and they can't qualify,
Right.
And I can control that. I can control who I market to because it's all a numbers game. I know how many people are going to say yes. So I want to make sure that the quality of the list is higher so the people that are saying yes are within the parameters that I run my business. And so if I ran mine between 72 and 76, more power to you, but you can control that. If I run 68 to 72, I can control that. Or if, let's say, I want to focus on the T65 business, I can weed out the people who are going to continue working. That's one of the questions that we ask. Do you have VA benefits, TRICARE benefits, or are you going to continue working? If they're going to continue working, I don't even get that lead. I never see it. The lead vendor would say, hey, are you going on Medicare for the first time? Can an agent call you tomorrow? Yes, I am. What about all these other questions that you, the agent, wants to know? Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. So with this strategy, I mean, to me, just at first blush, it sounds like you're doing more qualifying. So you're likely not getting as many if you're just broad-based like these vendors are, but which this is okay. But I'm curious, what kind of lead volume do you get with your 10 telemarketers roughly daily, roughly weekly like this?
So I focus on the weekly. I would say anywhere between 90 to 120 leads, depending if somebody called out sick or if I have two that need to be replaced. Because I'm always, we'll talk about the whole motivating them to continue to work. But at any given time, I would say I have between 6 and 10 calling in one day. But over the course of a week, it all averages out to them all getting about 20 hours a week.
Perfect. And so, so what is this? 100 plus leads, 10 people. This cost must be astronomical. What are we looking at?
So for 10 people at $3 an hour, working 20 hours a week, it's costing me $600 in leads.
Wow. That's fantastic. Yeah. So that's obviously these are offshore telemarketers, right? These aren't stateside.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And
Philippines.
And you'll be shocked. I mean, $3 an hour in some places is a middle-class income, that people love.
My favorite part about this, so I'm actually very passionate about helping people, not just to sell and to, hey, save some money on the Medicare supplement, but even the employment aspect of helping somebody, like in the Philippines, for example, where I have a lot of moms who have a family where the dad works 12 to 14-hour days. The mom stays home with the kids. She puts the kids to bed, and then she hops on the call. And for 4 to 6 hours, she can actually generate a pretty decent income while her kids are sleeping. And so it's not like a whole big old call center where we're just, filling in seats. We have a relationship with these people where when we hire them, we get to know them and like, oh yeah, I got 4 kids and blah, 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 and all this stuff. I'm like, wow, that's really good. So you're actually helping families, and most of them work from home to help better their situations. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, you're kind of cutting out the middleman that probably would pay him way less. So it's a direct relationship that helps people who need it. How do you keep telemarketers motivated? Because I'm sure it's just, we can all picture, if you've never done cold calling, it's a grind. You hear no a lot, and you're talking to a lot of people and slam the phone on. How do you keep these people sticking with you for years on end?
The biggest thing is building that relationship. I do Christmas bonuses. We're all part of a Hangouts chat where we're all talking every day. I wish them good luck, and if they need help with anything, I'll help them. If they have any questions, I'll help them. The management side of it's actually very easy once you hire them and you determine that they're going to be a good fit for your team. Keyword here, this is your team. Then it's just a matter of talking to them every day, getting to know them, asking about their family, good luck today, but then also not to make them work 8 hours a day. That's why I have 10 working 20-hour weeks, 4 hours a day versus 5 of them working 8 hours a day. I'm targeting the people like T65. I'm targeting when these people are home, and the telemarketer is not getting burnt out because they're not on the phone for 8 hours straight. I mean, I don't
Right.
know. I can't do it. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why I hire them out.
Right. So what kind of ROI are you getting with this entire system? Talk about closing ratio, and in
Mhm.
fact, that's probably what most people are thinking is
Yeah.
100 plus leads. How many are closing there? But you kind of
Mhm.
look at this like I do, actually. It's more about
Yeah.
ROI. Can you kind of
Yeah.
explain that?
Yeah. So, when you think of closing ratio, you look at the number of leads you bought, and then you focus on the number you didn't sell versus the number that you did sell. That's, in my opinion, what a lot of causes a lot of agents to fail, is because they're always focusing on the negative. I bought 20 leads. So let's say if you do buy from a lead vendor, it's okay. You bought 20 leads, but you didn't sell 15 of them. Well, yeah, you sold 5, but you're like, I just wasted money on these 15. And so the mentality is a little bit different. And so I don't really count how many leads I get every single week. I know an average number, which is enough for me to run my business. And I don't focus on how many I didn't sell. I focus on how much I spent this week on my leads. And the most important part is that you have this rotation going. If you stop for, let's say, a month, in 6 months, you're going to feel it because your pipeline is going to dry out. And so for me to focus on closing ratio, it's really hard to track that number because I'm calling leads that are 6 months, 8 months, 10 months old that are still within my dialing platform, which we'll talk about in just a second. So I focus on ROI. How much money did I spend this week, which is $600, versus how many policies did I sell? So myself, on average, with 10 telemarketers, I spend, and I wrote these numbers down. So I spent about $600 on average a week on leads. And it can give or take $50 if somebody worked less than 20 hours or so on and so forth. And out of that, I'm averaging between 7 to 10 Medicare supplements a week, and average about 3 dental, about 30% or so, about a cancer or 2 cancer plans. So anywhere between $2,100 to $3,000 is what my gross is
Nice.
on that $600 investment.
I'm curious, just as a business, do you sell any final expense at all?
I have in the past, and I sell final expense to the people that buy Medicare supplements. So out
Okay.
of the 7 to 10 a week, if I was to look at it from a month scale, I would say I would get 3 to 4 final expense policies a month out of the sales that I get for the Medicare supplements.
Are you asking for that, or are you just tripping across that, like when people mention it?
So the way I do it is, in the very beginning, whenever I do my presentation, and of course I ask, what information do you need to help you with the upcoming enrollment? In the fact finding, I'm asking what benefits. So you're losing your health insurance when you retire. What other benefits are you losing when you retire? Does that include life insurance? Is your life insurance through your employer, or do you have a separate policy? And then I ask that question. And so then I pin it for a follow-up appointment if that's something they're interested in. But then at the end of the call, when I geared towards, because the other question you asked is, how many people are you retiring with?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you're trying to get referrals and say, okay, well, Mr. Smith, you got Bob who's retiring with you. Why don't I go ahead and give Bob a call and tell him that you and I are working together? He said, so you get it. And then
Good.
at the end of the call, I say, now remember, we have a $25 referral gift card. So if you refer me somebody who may be interested in a Medicare supplement, you'll get a $25 gift card. But remember, we don't do just Medicare supplements. We do dental, vision, hearing. We do cancer plans, heart plans. We do life insurance. We do 401k rollovers. And so what you're doing is you're putting nuggets into these people's brain. And so that way they're like, oh yeah,
Right.
dental, by the way. And so later, like you mentioned, that you do dental as well, or you mentioned that you do 401k rollovers. Can you tell me more about that? And then I have a
Gotcha.
referral partner that we kind of send it over to. But you get the point.
Cool.
So we're always asking the question. So on the final expense side, I'm always asking, what other benefits are you losing when you're retiring?
Right. Gotcha. Cool. So you mentioned the platform that you use to
Mhm.
telemarket it, and probably as far as your CRM system goes. Can you kind of expand on that?
Yeah. So I actually I have my dialing platform, which is what I use Zen-Call, and we've have a agreement with them that our people get a discount. So the regular price, I think, is $150 a month. I think through ours, depending on what relationship we establish, between 100 and 120. But the point is, so I sit down, and whenever I make my calls, I don't I don't pick up my phone and dial one by one, or my office phone or dial one by one. What happens is my 10 telemarketers. So let's say we'll use 5 as an example. So I have my platform where it has 5 telemarketers, and my fingers are each of the telemarketers because I'm a visual person. And then I have my own platform here. And so what they do is whenever they click a button, it gets routed into what's called a secondary call queue, which is my login. And so whenever I sit down, I have 2 screens. I have my CRM, which the telemarketer, when they generate the lead, it goes into my CRM, and then it goes into my dialing platform. I sit down, I have my CRM up, I go from break to ready. And the hardest part about calling leads back, whether it's telemarketer leads, Facebook leads, age lead store, whatever, is that when you call, 60 to 70% of them are not going to pick up the phone right away. Right. And
Right.
that's very discouraging. And again, I like to focus on the positive and not the negative. So whenever I sit down and I go to make my calls, I don't see the phone numbers dialed. I don't see it until it connects.
Right.
And so the way that I maximize my downtime, which is, I sell over the phone, but I still call it windshield time, where it's, you're not
Just
making
waiting.
any money. You're just
Yeah.
waiting. I call my leads multiple lines at a time also. So I use the predictive dialer 2 to 3 lines at a time, and I can have 6 to 10 conversations in an hour. And like, well, how can you have that many conversations? Well, my business approach is to disqualify them as fast as possible. So within 5 minutes, if I'm doing the 68 through 72-year-old, for example, saving them money, I'm at the quote in less than 5 minutes. I want them to tell me that there's a savings, and I want them to tell me that they can health qualify, how their health is, before I even develop any kind of relationship with these people. Because if you look at it from somebody who's driving, imagine before you got in your car and drove an hour to go see somebody and do a face-to-face presentation, you knew that what you were pitching them, they can afford, and you knew that they were healthy enough to qualify before you ever got into the car to do so. And that's kind of my approach as well. So before I have that long hour conversation, my presentation, I want to make sure that I can save them money. They're not on a Medicare Advantage plan. I can save them money, and they can qualify before I tell them who I am and find out how long they've lived in Charleston, South Carolina, and develop that relationship and build that rapport.
What gives you that confidence to quickly disqualify your leads? Because you've worked with new agents, everybody holds onto those leads, and it's like, oh man, there's got to be something here. And just to say no to them in 5 minutes is a scary thought for a lot of people. Like what gives you that ability to just get rid of them if they just don't fit?
Because that conversation cost me $3.
Yeah, right. I would argue too. Yeah. I mean, just my perspective, when you have 100 plus leads a week,
yeah,
you got 99 more people to call.
Exactly.
Like, there's Dales out there. Yeah. I know there is, and I got to work through these leads to find them. Yeah. Right.
It's twofold. It's, you're not losing very much money by saying, no, let's move on. I can't help you. So it's like, you want them to work for it more than you work for it. Right. And so, let's see if there's a savings. Ms. Smith, you tell me if there's a savings. And so I have this approach that I use. But then you're right. I have so many leads coming in. Then when I hang up the phone, I've probably got 3 more new leads to call. And the best part about using this predictive dialer is as soon as I hang up the phone, the newest lead that was just generated gets put to the top of the list. So my dialer calls that newest first. And we know as salespeople, I think it's what you lose. The chance of you ever connecting to a lead again goes down 85% if you wait more than 5 minutes to contact them.
Right. Can you speak to the mindset? And I know we didn't talk about this, but you bring us some really good points just from a sales strategy. When you're in control of the time that you spend with these leads, and you don't have to grovel and beg these people to buy, can you kind of like speak to that overall?
Yeah. So with the turning 65 approach, it's what information do you need to help you with your enrollment? That's my line. That's how I get them talking. And the whole point is they're the ones talking. If it's a 72-year-old person and I'm trying to save money, I'm gonna say, hey, Ms. Smith, I'm giving you a call back. You spoke to my assistant about possibly, because again, I don't want to just give it to them, about possibly saving some money on the same exact Medicare supplement coverage you have now. And what I want to do is just give you a quick quote, because they don't want to spend an hour talking to you. I want to give you a quick quote to see if there's possibly a savings. And if there is, I can tell you how you can qualify for that savings. And so they're the ones working for it. I'm not asking for any information. I have their birthday, I have their zip code, I have everything that I need to give them a quote. And while I'm talking, I'm actually already pulling up the quote.
Right.
And so the only thing I need to know is if they have a plan F, if they have a plan G, if they have a plan N. And I ask them, because again, I want to give you a quote on the same exact coverage you have now. What I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm giving you a quote on the same plan. Do you have a plan F, a plan G, or a plan N? So they say I have a plan G. I'm like, okay, plan G, as you know, is the same as plan G with every company. So I'm going to do is give you a quote on that same plan G that you have right now. And I already had the quotes pulled up because all I had to do was choose which plan I'm quoting. And then once they say, oh, wow, yeah, that I'm paying 180 for my plan G, and I quoted them 120, and then I do the rest of my presentation.
Guys, if you're watching this and you know, this is interesting. One of the things I realized a couple of years into final expenses, you always are going to have problems in this business. Mm-hmm. And the best problem to have is too many people to talk to. When you are inundated with leads, and with a system like Eugene's, you can be, right? You can get them cheaply, and it's no big deal if you don't sell one. You've got 100 plus more to go. But when you're in a position where you have so many people to talk to, you're constantly busy, and you have less time than it takes to get through all of those leads in that week, it changes who's in control, who's in charge, the mindset that you're going to have. There is a sense of safety in numbers, right? Like, you've got all of these people, it changes the business. And with this arrangement, it's quite possible you're going to be in control. You don't have to beg for business. So many leads there, it's gonna be there. You know it is. So you developed a sense of confidence and mindset it's hard to do with very expensive leads and a minority of them.
Well, and so that's a good point, and I want to build on that a little bit, because a lot of agents, when they spend $15 for a lead that was generated and who knows where, that they have no control over the age, over anything, right? The person said yes. They said, yes, they have a Blue Cross Blue Shield plan, maybe get the rate or whatever. But the thing is, when you spend $15 for that lead, and that, okay, so they have a plan F, and the plan F that you're quoting them, there's no savings. So now you try to pivot to do the plan G or the plan N, and now you're doing a square peg in a round hole presentation. And it's like, I have to, because I spent $15 for this lead, so I don't want to waste this conversation. The way my approach is, if I can't save money on an F to an F, I move on. I'm not pulling teeth. I'm not trying to convince them about why plan G is better than plan F. I will do that next year during the renewal call once I've established that relationship, because I already got them as a client. But I'm low-hanging fruit. Same thing with Miss Smith, who is turning 65 in July. Eugene, I'm already working with an agent. I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't want to step on any toes. By the way, which recommendation did he make for you? Because I still want to try it at least once.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it was Aetna Plan G in South Carolina. I'm like, okay, that's a good recommendation. And I move on. I'm not like, well, did they tell you about Plan N?
Right.
I don't do that. I go to the next low-hanging fruit.
Right. And all of this is empowered by inexpensive leads and controlling the conversation so that you can get the ones that are low-hanging fruit. So.
And I didn't spend 10 minutes listening to a dial tone, dialing those leads to be able to have one conversation, because the dialer does all that for me.
So what kind of advice would you give somebody who likes the sound of your strategy as far as lead generation goes? What kind of advice would you give to them to jump into the telemarketing world to generate leads?
So twofold. So somebody starting out brand new, and we've touched on this point several times. So if you're new to the insurance industry, whether you're doing final expense or you're doing Medicare or really any line of work, you want to speed up the number of conversations that you have. And I like using a predictive dialer versus using my telephone, because it helps cut down the time. But you want to have more and more and more people to talk to. Whoever your lead vendor is, whoever you're buying the leads from, or you're generating your own, you want to make sure you have as many conversations as you can. Now, as far as somebody who's a veteran who's been in the business for a little while, I've been doing this for 12 years. And so in the last 12 years, I've really learned how to, what I call, follow the data. I know that my success rate among women between the ages of 68 and 72 is a lot higher than with men between the age of 68 and 72. I have a easier time selling to people in the South than people selling, let's say, in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, more in the Northeast. I know that about myself because I've been following the data. If I am talking to a bunch of leads and they say, I have a Medicare Advantage plan, I have a Medicare Advantage plan, my data is telling me I need to fix that on the front end, right?
Right.
If I get a lot of people that say, hey, I'm on the do not call list, why are you calling me? I need to make sure my data is right. So for a veteran who wants to have success, you want to follow the data and then manipulate the data before the telemarketer ever even sees that name come up on their caller ID or on the system.
Right. Excellent. Let's talk about DNC here, because I mentioned this kind of in the beginning. This is a growing issue and concern for me, because, and we kind of talked about this before the call, you know, there's a lot more, especially on the final expense side, I don't know about the Medicare side, a lot more DNC issues that are going on. These vendors that you buy leads from don't listen to the DNC. They generate them for the agent, and the agent buys them believing that the vendor legally did their job right. And they end up getting a DNC violation. They pay thousands of dollars to settle with a claimant. How do you get around? What advice would you give to be compliant doing telemarketing so that agents who are worried about this don't have to be?
So I've seen some lead vendors allow you to provide your own data set. So if you are working with a lead vendor, let's say you don't want to go through the headache of managing telemarketers. Yeah, I get it, because again, you want to sell, you don't want to manage. That's totally okay. Work with the lead vendor that when you pull the data, you know what you're pulling, and then give it. So for example, and what we talked about a little bit via email, you can call small businesses all day, every day about life insurance. There's thousands, hundreds of thousands of names that you can pull. And small businesses have employees that answer the phone. You're not violating any. So the point is, you control the data when you use your own telemarketer. And so as long as you've done your due diligence before you've ever uploaded the list into the system, you should be fine. Now, of course, when you pull a list, sometimes the person's already went on the DNC by the time you've uploaded it. I always like to have a voicemail. So if they call my caller ID back, because I own the phone number. So that's another important thing. So you want to make sure that you own the phone number, which the dialer Zen call that we recommend, you actually have to buy the phone number and that's yours. Versus some of them that like you can put in whatever number you want in the caller ID. So the point is this, whenever they call the phone number back, probably to yell at me or to tell me that I violated a law or whatever, what I typically do is in the voicemail say, hey, look, we called you about your upcoming enrollment to Medicare. We called you about your Medicare. Sometimes we accidentally call people who are on the do not call list. We didn't mean to. Leave us your name and we will take you off of our list, so we'll never call you again. And that right there, if somebody's really pissed off, like, hey, look, the guy's pretty genuine on the voicemail that I just listened to. Yeah, my name is Susie Smith. Please don't ever call me again. They're not going to pursue you most of the time any further because you've done your due diligence.
And so it's like taking the data thing, like you said earlier, and it's like, okay, I don't have to listen to people scream at me. Call this number, and then they'll take care of itself. So you can focus this down. Great,
exactly. And the thing is, what I tell my the people that work for me is, if somebody says, hey, I'm on the do not call list, I don't know why you're calling me, and we accidentally called them, we have a button that says do not call. So when you hit that button, we will never ever call that phone number ever again. Not the name, but the phone number. Because sometimes you'll get husband who's turning 65 in a month and wife that's turning 65 in 3 months.
Yeah.
The point is, because you have the telemarketer who works for you and you control the dialer and you control the data, you have control over all of that, versus buying from a vendor and you don't know where that lead was generated from.
Awesome, Eugene. Well, thank you so much for being here. This has been pretty informative. Definitely getting in the inside baseball of what it's like to generate insurance leads via telemarketing. Can you tell my audience where they can find out more about yourself, those trained telemarketers?
Yep. So traintelemarketers.com. There's a video on the homepage on how you can actually hire, recruit, and train your own if you don't want to pay us to do it. If you don't want to go through that headache and you want us to do it for you, just reach out, support@traintelemarketers.com or Eugene@traintelemarketers.com, and we'll answer any questions that agents may have.
All right. Eugene, thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.
Bye, guys.
Bye.